I'm Ace Buchan. I'm a professional surfer from the Central Coast. Growing up on the Central Coast was a dream for a young kid that loved the ocean as much as I did and had this amazing playground to go and explore, to kind of have the chance to wake up and, watch the sunrise, pre-dawn light kind of turn into those beautiful blue and pink hues. Nature, in the way that it was kind of intended is really special. The beaches and the space that we have on the Central Coast has given me a lot of clarity, and it's kept me grounded. It's kept my keel upright when things have gone a little bit crazy in my life, and being able to glide along the face of a moving piece of ocean that's been generated hundreds of thousands of miles away, it's a feeling like no other. One of the things I really love about the Central Coast is that there are these beautiful kind of swathes of land that have been declared national parks, and as a child I was lucky enough to start experiencing that with my parents. To now go and do that with my kids is really special. Being able to kind of walk through the bush and not see anyone else and just kind of listen to the sounds and sometimes just drop the surfboards and go exploring, I feel pretty lucky to have access to. For tens of thousands of years, people have inhabited this land and looked after it and cared for it, and we need to respect this beautiful playground that we've been lucky enough to call home. It's something pretty special.
Well, good evening, everybody, and I'd like to first of all acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands upon which we're meeting today and pay my respects to elders both past, present and future. Welcome to the 25th of January 22 Central Coast Council Ordinary Meeting, and I will now declare the meeting open. Just to remind people that the meeting is being webcast, and if you're participating, please just remember that your image and what you say is being recorded and broadcast live to the public, so just please be mindful of this. And I probably don't have to remind you that you should avoid making statements that might defame or offend, and just note the Council won't be responsible for any of those such actions. I would ask those in the public area to just remain seated. Delighted to see everybody wearing masks. I'm sure you find them quite a pain in the backside to have to do it. I do. So I'm quite relieved that I'm actually talking. I can therefore have an excuse to get rid of my mask just for the time being. I will do my normal little introduction. I just first of all want to welcome the community back and just hope everybody had a pretty happy and safe Christmas, and I hope everybody will have a great year coming forward. Here at Council, of course, it's a new year for us, and last year is probably a year that the majority of people, certainly within the Council, would like to move past fairly rapidly. We've certainly sort of hit the ground running, and there's been a lot of action happening already inside here, inside the organisation. But I do want to just take a moment to reflect on the reporting of the Council in this morning's media. And I want to firmly state, unequivocally, the Central Coast Council is proud of its commitment to serving the vibrant and diverse Central Coast community. And I want to make it abundantly clear, Council has never stated that it will not be flying the Australian flag on Australia Day 2022. It is particularly disappointing that the Parliamentary Secretary for the Central Coast released a media statement, which I have here, and I'm sure the media have got, which said it is disappointing to see the Central Coast Council have made the decision not to fly the national flag this Australia Day and also upcoming Anzac Day. Those statements are untrue, and it is in no way statements or policy of the Council. Council will, in fact, be flying the Australian flag on Australia Day 2022, and we proudly display the Australian flag at the Wyong Administrating Building year-round, alongside the Australian Aboriginal flag, the Torres Strait Islander flag, the New South Wales state flag, and the Central Coast Council flag. And it is disappointing, as I said, that this matter has been misreported by the media, and that our community has ended up being divided, particularly leading up to a day when we all should be united. And I'll have to also commend the federal government, who have come to an agreement on the copyright of the Australian Aboriginal flag, and I actually look forward to, subject to a policy potentially being developed down the track around banners, but I look forward to this being incorporated into future banners here at Council. I just want to state that the Peninsula Chamber of Commerce sent an email out on Sunday to the CEO and myself requesting this to happen, that banners in the form of the Australian flag be installed on Australia Day at Umina. And then they followed that by going to the media on the Monday morning, and that appears on Sky News Monday evening. One of the interesting facts around that, there are no such Australian flag banners in existence at the present point in time. It was not even possible to be able to do it. And currently, the banner poles in Umina celebrate the 100 years of the Ocean Beach Surf Club, which is a significant milestone that acknowledges the Ocean Beach Surf Club's contribution to the community for the last century. And that agreement to have those flags up for 6 weeks is an agreement that the Council has with the Surf Club, and was the result of a contribution, a grant that went. It was one of the milestones from the grant process. So I can assure everybody, if you look outside, you will see the flag flying now, and you will certainly see it flying tomorrow. Coming back to business, last week I was joined by the Federal Member for Robertson, Lucy Wicks, MP, and the local Ettalong Eagles Netball Club players, Taylor Sankey and Sophie Planica, and the Woy Woy Peninsula Netball Association President Sharon Bailey. And that was at the Lemon Grove Netball Courts. Now, over the past period, the last couple of years, the council, in conjunction with the state government, have provided hard services there and so on. And this was about actually funding that came from the federal government. And I have to say it was entirely funded by the federal government to reconstruct the old sporting amenities block there through the Community Development Grants Program. And this will actually complete that particular sporting facility, and it will look fantastic. In terms of the awards that have been going on, in response to the latest strain of COVID last week, Council did have to hold the Australia Day Awards ceremony online. The Australia Day Awards are an integral part of our Australia Day celebration, and I was joined electronically by the Council's 2022 Ambassador, Karen Jones. Each year we celebrate the achievement and contribution of prominent local community members through our awards. The awards were open to applicants from across the entire Central Coast region, with all nominees having the chance to be named as Central Coast Citizen of the Year. As usual, the calibre of award nominees was outstanding, and is a testament to the depth of talent and community spirit that we have here on the Central Coast. And I really would like to acknowledge all the nominees and celebrate the great contribution that they all make to our community. But once again, I would like to congratulate the winners and our Central Coast Citizen of the Year, Robin Downham. I will now close the council meeting to commence the open forum. And we hold this open forum to hear from community members who have registered to speak. And I look forward to hearing their views, because they can talk about anything in the open forum. You can talk about anything. It doesn't have to be related to items on the agenda. And if we have some knowledge beforehand, then generally speaking, I can ask one of the executive to actually respond to the comments that are made. So with that, I also have to just remind you again that the forum is being webcast, and just to pay attention to that. But I would like to invite Mr. Treadwell, and thank you for sending something in and talking about it, and you have 3 minutes. Just move closer to the mic. Yeah.
I wish to bring to the council's attention the lack of acknowledgements and responses to service requests made online through the customer service centre, and the general lack of maintenance being performed around the Woongarra Waters estate. I do understand the council's had to make serious cutbacks to services due to the financial position they were in, but they need to ask themselves the question, when do the cutbacks outweigh the risk to public safety? My local suburb of Woongarra hasn't had some of its parks and grass edges around footpaths cut since early December. And in some places there's weeds growing up to knee high. We as residents and ratepayers are required to maintain the footpaths and nature strips around our property. The council should be at least keeping their part of the bargain. I know there's many families that won't go to the parks anymore or walk around the footpath due to the long grass and the risk of snakes being in there. I myself, before Christmas, had a red-bellied black snake come out of the waterway and go across the grass into my garden. Obviously, it is a waterway. We do expect there will be snakes, but usually if the grass is kept trim around them, they usually don't venture too far out. Additionally, the main point I wish to raise is a request that I did make, which I have referenced in my submission, that about the drains around the streets, and the fact that the request was closed off without any acknowledgement or email. I only found out because I logged in 12 days later and realised it had been closed off. So far, nothing has been done to the drains, and it rained again after I made that request, and the street flooded and made my backyard flood up. I provided detailed pictures on this submission at the time to help, with the assessment, but so far obviously nothing was done. I will add, whether it's a coincidence, I did notice someone was there today taking pictures of the drains, or whether that was because my submission I sent in last night, I'm unsure. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. I think first of all, I'm going to ask Luke Welfare to actually, Stephen Digham to first of all speak, I think.
Through you, Mr Administrator, I can speak on behalf of the roadside stormwater matter. That has been listed in the maintenance system, and we have commenced initial review. I can confirm that a staff member will be in contact with Mr Treadwell by the end of this week to discuss the matter further.
And we will also get Luke Welfare to just make some comments. Oh, is it? No, sorry.
Thanks, Mr Administrator.
I'm getting confused. We've got so many acting people at the moment here. It's, not because of COVID, but because people have taken the opportunity to have a bit of a break.
Thanks, Mr Administrator.
So, Mr Bell.
Thanks for that. In relation to the parks and reserve mowing, Council's normal adopted level of service for park maintenance at Woongarra Waters remains unchanged at 3 weekly in peak growth period, which would be now, of course, and 5 weekly in the low growth period, which is normally the winter period time. How's that? Shall I start again?
Yeah, that would be better.
Okay.
Because
Well,
I think people might have had difficulty hearing.
Just to hear my dulcet tones, Mr
Speak close.
Administrator.
Bring the mic closer to you and speak.
In relation to the parks and reserve mowing, Council's normally adopted level of service for park maintenance at Woongarra Waters remains unchanged at 3 weekly in peak growth period, which is now, and 5 weekly in the low growth period. However, this current growth period has been impacted by both staffing and machinery resourcing, which Mr Treadwell has noted, along with being an extremely high growing period, impacting Council's capacity to meet the maintenance schedule for the grass mowing. The maintenance at this park has recently been undertaken as the aim is to return back to the schedule resource dependent. Thank you, Mr. Administrator.
Thank you, Mr Bell. And thank you, Mr Treadwell, for raising the issue. Whilst the answers may not necessarily be exactly what you want to hear, I can assure you that by actually raising the things in here, staff are alerted to the issue and there's certainly more chance, I'll put it that way, of things taking place. But thank you for taking the time to come along. So with that, I will now declare the open forum closed and I will now resume the ordinary council meeting. We do have a couple of speakers registered to speak on items during the meeting, and I will call those community members to speak as we approach that item. So when we get to the item number, I will actually ask you up to speak. So with that, I'm going to move to item 1.1, which is disclosures of interest. I have no conflicts of interest to declare. I don't believe any of the staff have any conflicts. Unless you have, please raise your hand. Nobody's doing that. So we will now resolve the resolution that is shown on the screen. Item 1.2, the confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting. I have looked at the minutes from the previous meeting. I'm comfortable with them. So I will now resolve to adopt the resolution as shown on the screen. Item 1.3, which is the notice of intention to deal with matters in closed session. We do have currently listed in item 3.1, the Mardi water treatment plant tender evaluation. Now, Council was proposing to deal with this in closed session. However, since the recommendations are not confidential, I intend to have not so much a discussion, but to actually talk a little bit about the paper in conjunction with the Acting Director of Water and Sewer. And we will do that, but I have to say the paper will still remain confidential because it does have commercial things in it, which when you hear the way we're going to resolve, you will understand we don't particularly want the paper going out into the wide world. So, but we can tell you a little bit about what technically is going to be happening there. So we will deal with that when we come to that item, but it won't be in a closed session. So we'll move to item 2.1, which is the investment report for December 2021. And I think Ms Cowley, the Chief Financial Officer, will talk to that paper.
Thank you, Mr. Administrator. If I can ask that the presentation be put on the screen, that will be great, and then I'll speak to that. Thank you. So if we go to the next page, Thank you. You could see that the current cash and investment rate for 31st of December 2021 is $587 million. That is an improvement on the total consolidated funds that was available 30th of November of $571.9 million. And if we go to the next page, thank you, we provides the normal breakdown of unrestricted funds. The unrestricted funds balance is $45 million. That is made out of the numbers made in, recorded in red, belonging to the water fund of $9.5 million, in the drainage fund of $36.3 million. That total amount is less than the amount available in the general fund's unrestricted funds balance of $70.2 million. And so as a result, Council is making a recommendation to fund the unrestricted deficit balance belonging to the water fund and the drainage fund from that general fund unrestricted balance. If we go to the next slide, we would see that the benchmark bank bill swap rate is 0.01%, and the interest rate that Council has been able to deliver is between 0.29 and 3.18%, and I feel satisfied that we are performing better than the benchmark bank bill rate. The only other thing that I'd like to make a point of is that this council, the council's investments were in excess of its 3 to 5 year term group trading limits by $4.3 million at 31st of December due to a large number of investment maturities towards the end of December 2021. However, I can confirm that there were no individual trading limits that have been exceeded, and on that basis, this exceedance has been accepted and it has been corrected in January 2022. Thank you, Mr. Administrator.
Thank you, Ms. Cowley. And I have to say the very important thing to take note from this report as we go through the year is basic tracking that table that you saw, because that's the table that informs the community of the amount of working capital or unrestricted cash that the organisation has. And as Ms. Cowley pointed out, as at the end of December, or after 6 months, we're actually in a position whereby the amount of working capital we have can offset the negative balances in both water and drainage. And that's obviously a good thing. Now, I just have to remind people, as the CFO would remind me, that these numbers can vary from month to month as flows come in, and it's the timing of receipts such as council revenue from rates and timing of expenditure. So they can have a big influence as the actual timing. But generally speaking, to say after 6 months we're in that position is a pretty good thing to have occurred, and we are in a much better position than we forecasted at the beginning of this crisis. So at 6 months, I can feel reasonably comfortable that we're on track and that the business recovery plan that we put in place is working. So with that, I will now move the motions that's shown on the screen and put those as a decision of council. And now we'll move to item 2.2, and we have a speaker, Mr. Weller, I believe. So welcome. I look forward to your comments.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yes.
Yep. Thank you for your time. We put in some comments on the Sustainability and Climate Action Plan to David Milliken just yesterday. We support the measures in the action plan, but feel it does not do the job needed in a plan for government at council level. The IPCC, the UN Environment Programme and many other organisations have called for an emergency cut to global emissions, termed a Code Red for humanity. The Paris target is to curb warming so we don't go above 1.5 degrees. Above this value, scientists have found that there is a real threat of a cascade of tipping points that would drive the climate towards a hothouse Earth. Passing the tipping point would be sufficient to drive a cascade of changes on its own without any further human influence, reaching a situation that would be a disaster that humanity might not survive. So we are talking a real and present danger to our survival. The sort of emissions cuts being called for would require us to replace all of our electricity production with renewables and all our vehicle fleet with electric within the next 8 years. Any climate action plan must include this basic tenet: immediate, serious and large-scale emissions cuts. This action plan does not do this. Council is quite capable of achieving significant reductions in its corporate operations. As an example, 100% renewable electricity, or replacement of internal combustion engines by mid-decade, or 100% methane capture and disposal from waste by 2028. The overall target profile required to meet our responsibilities under the Paris Agreement would essentially mean we need to achieve about 80% cuts for Council's operations by the end of this decade. All of this and much more is laid out in the submission sent through yesterday that also has many ideas for assisting Council and the community that are not in the action plan. We would have welcomed the opportunity to work with Council to incorporate targets before the Council finalise their plan. There are plenty of good ideas in the action plan, but without a target profile, it will achieve little or nothing. We are running out of time to save ourselves from our own folly. This plan must include targets to be a credible climate action plan. We call on you to incorporate the targets we recommend or schedule an immediate update to put targets in the plan within 3 months. We simply don't have time to wait. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weller. I'm going to cover off two birds with one stone here. I'm going to ask Mr. Milligan, who is the Acting Director of Environmental Planning, to respond to your comments and then also to introduce the paper, and perhaps he'll combine the two things together. Mr. Milligan.
Thank you, Mr. Administrator, and thank you, Mr. Weller, for your comments and for the conversation we've had this week. It's been, I think we've had a really good conversation around this. What I'll do is I'll introduce the item and talk to your comments at the same time, and there should be some slides to go up on the screen. Thank you. So the Sustainability and Climate Action Plan has 27 actions in it as it stands. Those actions aim to reduce Council's environmental footprint, mitigate the effects of a changing climate, become a net zero emissions council, and be resilient against environmental change and natural disasters. So they're the aims that this plan intends to achieve, and there are 27 actions related to achieving those aims. I think we'd all agree that the 27 actions in there are not enough. More needs to be done to address climate change at all levels of government. But this plan is a solid start and really outlines exactly things that we are doing at the moment and things that we propose to do in the next 2 to 3 years to start us on that journey. The plan has been developed over the past 3 years. In 2019, we started an engagement exercise with the community when we kicked off the Central Coast Council's climate change policy. We commenced a working group, which was once that policy was adopted, we commenced a working group which was intended to guide the development of the Sustainability and Climate Change Action Plan. But unfortunately, COVID-19 came along and that working group had to move to an online environment. Notwithstanding that, we had nearly 4,000 public submissions and over 700 submissions from students into the Sustainability and Climate Change Action Plan, which is an excellently high number of submissions on a council action plan. So it shows there's a lot of interest out in the community on this theme. The top 5 responses were on the themes of waste and recycling, water security, Central Coast biodiversity, renewable energy and greenhouse emissions, as Mr. Weller spoke to, and 5th, preparing for climate change. So there are a number of key actions that are already underway across council, and I won't go through them all, but a couple of key ones. Environmental management activities. So we're looking at species management plans. We're looking at our unique flora and fauna and how we manage that into the future. We've installed solar panels across various council buildings, which has reduced our footprint by 1,100 tonnes of carbon dioxide per annum, which is equivalent to the electricity used by 230 homes. Our fleet is transitioning towards hybrid and electric vehicles, with the majority of our, sedan and hatch-sized vehicles being hybrid electric. And we're generating electricity through the extraction and combustion of landfill gas at our waste management facilities. So they're just a few examples of the things that we are doing as an organisation to address climate change. Some of the key actions, one of the first ones is working with local community groups throughout the Central Coast to facilitate a range of activities. Speaking with Mr. Weller during the week, we really appreciate his offer of working with council to work on how we can develop robust targets for the Central Coast. One of the actions within the plan is reviewing the Central Coast climate change policy, which is the policy as to what council is doing about our policy position around climate change. That presents a real opportunity to adopt those targets at a policy level as to what we want to achieve over the next 5-10 years and beyond. So that was what we intend to do to address Mr. Weller's comments. We think having targets is important, but we need the ability to work with our community to engage and address what those targets really should be. A couple of other key actions for 22-23 is reduce the amount of organic material going to landfill, which reduces the amount of methane gas contributing to global warming, and undertaking a lot of strategic planning activities around sustainable transport and ensuring our medium and higher density developments have higher order sustainability and climate change measures incorporated into those developments. We will progress the reporting against this action plan through our normal corporate reporting processes, and we'll review the action plan in 2025. And as I said, we'll be working on reviewing our climate change policy this coming financial year, and that will look at to what extent our climate change targets should be. Thank you, Mr. Administrator.
Thank you for that. It sounds, Mr. Weller, like you might have some more work to do in helping us achieve some of those targets, not so much achieve, but set some targets in there. And I think you can hear the willingness that we are prepared to look at, including some better targets and so on in there as we start to go forward. I think it's important to note we are talking about here like 3 years. It's the horizon. We're talking about a review in 2025, and that's when an elected body will come in, and an elected body will be in by then, I should say, and they will be the ones who will need to carry this forward. At this point in time, we don't forecast that we're going to have excess monies to be able to invest in a lot of these areas. We can continue to do some of the things we are doing, which Mr. Milliken has outlined. But overall, in the next short horizon, we are somewhat cash-strapped in order to be able to move forward. But nonetheless, I can't disagree with your comments about having targets. And I think your response you heard from Mr. Milliken says that we will be putting some more targets in, and we will be trying to get the actions there, and we will be reporting those on the way through over the next 2 or 3 years. So with that, I think that has commenced the implementation of that Central Coast Climate Change Policy that was put forward in 2019. and it is what we can do for now. But I have no doubt that there's more that can be done. Can't disagree with you at all on that. And I would hope that as the council has security in its future income cash flows, that it will be able to spend more money in making sure some of this comes to fruition. So with that, I'm going to endorse the Central Coast Sustainable Climate Action Plan as per the attachment and pass the recommendations that are shown on the screen. With that, we move to item 2.3, which is the pecuniary interest disclosure form. We have a couple of the executives who have had some adjustments to make to that. So because they've made adjustments to their form, they have to come through council and be approved, and then they're recorded as such. So there's no need to go into that. So I will just note that report and adopt the resolution as shown on the screen. Item 2.4, which is applying the common seal to the council lease at Umina Recreation Precinct, the Yasmin Greens kiosk. Now, this is a slightly interesting one because the kiosk is regulated under the Retail Leases Act 1994, but the lease is in fact over a Crown Reserve, so that's managed by Crown Reserve Trust, and their requirements are that the seal has to be applied to the lease document. So it's a machinery of government, if you like, change where we do have to apply the seal to this lease. I might add that the Greens Trust, the Jasmine Greens kiosk has been operating for the past 5 years. They originally had a 5-year contract with an option on a further 5 years, and they have exercised that option of continuing on. So of course the lease will continue, but it does need the seal applied. So with that, I'm going to resolve to adopt the resolutions as shown on the screen. Item 2.5, which is the request to name Tawoon Bay Lifeguard Tower in memory of Alan Cook. I think we have Mr. Cook to speak. I presume a relative.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Administrator.
Good.
I'm Daniel Cook, the son of Alan Cook. First of all, I want to pay respects to the traditional owners of the land, the Darkinjung people, past, present and emerging. I wanted to speak tonight on behalf of my family, my mother Shane and my sister Hayley. Mother Shane lives in Urara still, and my sister Hayley down in Melbourne these days. We're a family who all grew up here on the New South Wales Central Coast, and indeed it sort of takes me back a little bit, having been a former city councillor in Gosford in my 20s back in 1999 until 2004. So not a stranger to this, and we're very glad to be here on the January Administrator, yeah. That's wonderful, thank you. I wanted to firstly also pay acknowledgement to Stephen Prince, a former colleague of my father Alan, who was a long-term employee here at Wyong Council. Stephen's in the gallery tonight as well, who put together the submission to recognise my father's activities. I think it fairly spells out Alan's great commitment to this community. He and my mother had run the Wyong swimming pool when I was first born. We lived in Wyong. And then he went on to being employed at Wyong Council as a lifeguard, which he served for more than 34 years. His commitment there, most of the time based at Tawoon Bay Surf Club. And as a lifeguard on this council, really championed a number of significant movements really to protect the public here. One of those was putting lifeguard towers on the beaches. You'll be familiar with a number of the beaches in the Old Wyong Shire, particularly the entrance channel, particularly Tawoon Bay. Having those lifeguard towers gives you that visibility of the public when they get into trouble. And he was a huge advocate of having those, you know, really positioning the lifeguards closer to where the public swim and can get into trouble. And he had a very proud record in this region of not having lost any lives within the patrolled areas as the council lifeguards in the northern half of the Central Coast during his time as a lifeguard here. And his volunteer work extended to the weekends, where he was a long-time member of both the Voca Surf Lifesaving Club and also Umina Beach Surf Lifesaving Club, as well as he'd done a number of things helping, the Central Coast Surfing for the Disabled, the Buttercups, the women who swim in Tawoon Bay from time to time, and he was well known right up and down the Central Coast in terms of with local fishermen, surfers, dog walkers. I know the former general manager, Mr. Dawson, used to regularly engage with my father from time to time. And he was well loved and liked by many of the staff here, particularly in Wyong. But obviously our family lived down in Gosford for all of those years. So we're quite humbled by the outpouring of support that we received after the unexpected passing of my father in 2019. And we're really humbled by the support of this council for the naming of the lifeguard tower in his memory. We would probably need to, given that I will be back to the UK soon. I'm living here for a short while, helping my mum on a few things, but we will try and get something maybe in early next year on our next visit when we can get all the family together. My father obviously had his brother Len up on the Gold Coast, his brother John in the Gold Coast, and his sister Cheryl up in Port Macquarie. So we need something that when we do have a ceremony that we can invite all of the extended family, because they are spread all corners of the country and the world, and obviously the community members from a number of the surf clubs and related community organisations that Dad had been involved with for many years. And particularly I also need to pay thanks to Tawoon Bay Surf Club, who supported this particular commemoration, as well as our local MPs, the federal member for Dobell, Emma McBride, the state member for the entrance, David Meehan, and the state member for Wyong, who knew my dad for many years at Umina Surf Club, David Harris, who I think is also a member of Soldiers Beach Surf Club today. So we really appreciate, as a family, that recognition on behalf of this community, and I think we can all be proud of the work that Dad, Alan, had done over many years in this community, and naming the tower after him would be very fitting, given all he's done to save lives, ensure that the beaches are well patrolled here, and indeed just be a great volunteer and advocate for so many parts of the community. So a massive thank you, Administrator and your team, for the report tonight, and we're very humbled still today. So on behalf of my mum, Shane, my sister Hayley and I, we're very thankful for the acknowledgement, and we look forward to paying a tribute to him at some point in the future. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Daniel, and you spoke extremely well, and I think the family clearly is very proud of his performance. I mean, clearly I didn't know your father, but just reading a little bit about him, and you've articulated the key things he's done, so I don't need to go through those. But clearly, he had a major impact on surf lifesaving in this part of the world. The fact that, as you say, a number of state politicians actually strongly supported his case, as did the president of the Surf Lifesaving Club. So look, all in all, clearly highly deserved, and all I can say is congratulate the family on that, and the fact that there is something to remember him by, I think, is fabulous. So with that, I'm very happy to pass the resolution, and hopefully that will be done very shortly. Thank you. And now we move to item 2.6, which is the monthly finance report for December. So in other words, our 6 monthly report, if you like. And I'm going to ask the Chief Executive, Mr. Farmer, just to talk about the highlights and exactly where we sit.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Administrator. December was an unusual month in that it had 5 pay weeks in it, and there was also a worldwide issue with a piece of software called Kronos, which is a software that we do our time and attendance with and allocates salaries and wages costs. So there is a minor issue, or a reasonably minor but still material issue in the costing, which will wash out a little bit later. At a headline level, we performed worse than budget by $2.8 million this month. But of that $2.8 million, approximately $1.2 million of that was to do with the Kronos timing issue, where it appears that money has been put against expenses as opposed to capital expenditure. So after you wash that out, it's about a $1.6 million worse than budget expectation performance, and so we have to keep a very close eye on that. As I've said in the past, our margins are very fine. However, we have traded very, very well in the 5 months before that. So we're still about $13 million better than budget, even despite the slightly worse than expected result in December. So we're still performing very well over the year and on track to hit our budget targets.
Thank you, Mr. Farmer. Yes, I noted the correction, and we anticipated a bit of a correction there. But I think the underlying position is strong. So whilst there is a loss, or if you like, a negative difference between the budget and what actually occurred for the numbers at the bottom line for December, the year to date, which is the more important number, still shows us $12 million ahead of our budget at the 6-month mark. So I think, my view is I think we're still on track to achieve the year-end forecast, which currently sits at $3 million. But my view is that I think we're performing well enough, and once we're over this anomaly of the 5-week period and the Kronos situation, I do believe we will be on track to actually achieve the $7 million, which was the original budget. So again, along with the cash position, I have to say at 6 months, I'm pretty comfortable with the position we're in, and it's a credit to the organisation that they're managing to live well within our means. So with that, I'm just going to note the monthly financial reports and make that as a decision of council. We now move to item 3.1, which is what I mentioned we would be, was set down to being confidential. As I said, we're not going to release the paper because it does contain commercial information in it, which wouldn't be helpful to us. But what I would like to do is ask the Acting Director of Water and Sewer, Luke Welfare, to actually just talk a little bit about the project and how we are moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Administrator. So the Mardi water treatment plant upgrade is to secure long-term drinking water for the Central Coast.
Just move a bit closer to the mic, or bring it closer to you. Yeah.
This upgrade includes new and upgraded chemical dosing systems, the construction of a dissolved air flotation or DAF clarification plant, remediation and upgrades to the sludge lagoons and supernate outlet structures, and a significant upgrade to the electrical facilities on the plant, including upgrade to the high voltage systems. The project objectives are to secure the capability of 160 megalitres a day of treatment capacity at the treatment plant, and allow for the periodic changes to the multiple water sources that the plant actually treats. This will lower the dissolved organic carbon concentrates and improve the chlorine persistence and reduce disinfectant byproducts from the formation at the treatment plants. Over the last period of time, the Water and Sewer team have been working with tenderers we've gone to the market, and what the report actually seeks to achieve is the approval so that we can continue those negotiations such that the price that we receive better aligns to the estimates that were originally supplied, and so that we can achieve an efficient outcome for the community on the Central Coast. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Welfare. Yeah, so really in short, the tenders came in considerably more than we have budget for, and given the status of the water reserve and so on, we're not in a position to fund more than what the budget will allow. This is a mechanism whereby we can go back and hopefully talk to and work through with players out there and actually achieve a much better price for the council. So that's the intention, is to be able to try and get a better price for the council so we can enable this project to be able to go ahead. So with that, I'm going to agree to the resolutions that are shown on the screen and pass those as a decision of council. And that brings us to a conclusion of tonight's meeting. So we will conclude the the meeting at wherever the time is, 7:19. And I thank everybody for tuning in, and for those who were able to turn up today, thank you for coming along. And with that, I'll bid you all good night.